Life in a concentration camp tore open the human soul and exposed its depth. Is it surprising that in those depths we again found only human qualities, which in their very nature were a mixture of good and evil? The rift dividing good from evil, which goes through all human beings, reaches into the lowest depths and becomes apparent even on the bottom of the abyss, which is laid open by the concentration camp. I'm ahead of the curve, also known as James Bergman, and in today's book review I will be discussing Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, first published in 1946. One of the outstanding classics to emerge from the Holocaust. Man's Search for Meaning is Viktor Frankl's story of his struggle for survival in Auschwitz and other concentration camps. Today, this remarkable tribute to hope offers us an avenue to finding greater meaning and purpose in our own lives. I've read this piece before a few years ago and it was an instant favourite for me. This is such a short book. I read it in one sitting today. It really is a very easy read, but at the same time a very disturbing one. And that's a deathly combination, considering the fact that it really takes a toll on you, even though you only read it for a certain amount of time, which isn't lengthy at all. I must admit, this is probably not only one of my favourite books in general, but also maybe the best book on the experiences of the concentration camps in World War II that I've read, and I have read a fair few by this point. Viktor Frankl, the author of this piece, was actually a psychologist before he was plunged into the abyss of the concentration camps. He actually wanted this book to be published anonymously. The first edition of the piece only had the title on it. It didn't even have his name. But his friends swayed him otherwise, and it was subsequently then published with his name attached to it. Because I think the idea was that he had in his mind was he wanted the book to be a reflection of the common man, the common Jew, the common gypsy, whatever you might want to call it, whoever was a victim of these camps. He wanted it to symbolize the general person who had these experiences, who went through these troubling times in these camps. A lot of people don't know this, but the logotherapy section towards the end, which those of you who have read it may be familiar with, that's actually from another book that he wrote, but it is now added into this edition at the very least, because this isn't only a book on what he saw, but also a diagnosis of himself and others psychologically, a diagnosis of the time that he was in. And so as he gives you these stories to ponder on that he experienced in the past, he's also going into it and he's explaining it in more detail, and he's going through the meaning of his thoughts and his journey. And so it's far deeper than this mere book about memories, reflections. It's a psychological investigation in some aspects of his mentality, starving to death, forced to do manual labour, strenuous manual labour. It is far more than the outset of this book may seem to be. In the book as well, and this was a number of years ago that he wrote this, obviously, but he said that it was a 1 in 28 chance that somebody would survive in one of these camps. And he nearly, in actual fact, did die. There was a point towards the end of his experience in those camps where there was a truck and these Axis soldiers were loading up these trucks to take them apparently to safety. The soldiers were being very kind to them, to the prisoners, and they were saying, look, it's okay, we'll take you to safety, the war's over. But in actual fact, what they did was drive to another camp and lock them in a building and set it on fire. Frankl and his friend at the time, that nearly happened to them both. But because the truck could only take a certain amount of passengers, Frankl and his friend were left behind. And at the time they thought that that was disappointing, and they were obviously starving. But later on he realised that actually they did die. The people who boarded that truck perished by the hands of the soldiers. A prison term was not only uncertain but unlimited. A well-known research psychologist had pointed out that life in a concentration camp could be called provisional existence. We can add to this by defining it as provisional existence of unknown limit. This unlimited time frame of a prisoner essentially not knowing when their time would end, this has a twofold effect. Either prisoners have this infinite hope that it will end soon, and for that reason they continue living, or at least want to, they have the desire to, or on the other hand, they die from a crippling sense of false hope. They lose this hope, and they essentially degrade psychologically in believing that they will not get any help. Interestingly, throughout this experience of Frankl's, he notes how a friend of his in the camp was trying to hold off. He was trying to survive until the Allied soldiers arrived to the camp to evacuate them. And Frankl said that he believes this friend could not hold out anymore because he had lost all faith, all hope in being rescued. And he said that this psychological belief had such a strength on him that he, in a sense, spiritually just let go. And he died the following day. Yes, this book is a piece that you will have to read with caution. It isn't easy to get through without creasing, without going through unpleasant feelings as you read Frankl's account. But what I think is so important about reading this kind of literature, this historical literature, specifically perhaps on World War II, or on what was done to these people for their mere dispositions, why I think history is so important to look into and to learn about is because he who does not understand history, who does not learn from history, is damned to repeat it, I think the quote is. Although I'm not sure who originally said it. I think it's very important to read history, and if you're a frequent viewer of my channel, you'll know that I review books that are sometimes unknown. You know that I review books that are sometimes very popular. And this is a book that is very popular, and technically I didn't have to review this and do a video on this because it is pretty well known. But on the other hand, I feel like I like to promote a book if I feel that it has to be read, if I feel that it's profound to read and to have read it. I think it's important to propagate the importance of understanding history, looking into the past and trying to learn from it and take things from it. And so for that reason, I am here with this video reviewing this book. One other thing that Frankl discusses is logotherapy, as I mentioned before at the beginning of the video. And I'm not going to go too deeply into logotherapy because I don't believe it's really the main point of the book, although it is there with necessity, considering logotherapy is, and logos, Greek for meaning, so meaning therapy, basically, that's what logotherapy means. And it's essentially linked to the book because what Frankl points out is that love is the conclusion that he came to. Love transcends all else. When he was missing food, when he was missing warmth, what he missed most was his wife, his partner. And it is all Frankl's belief that love transcends all, and this links to logotherapy because he was talking about meaning and the psychology behind meaning. The logotherapy chapter isn't very long, but it is an interesting read. Just to read about the theoretical concept of logotherapy is worth doing as well. So yeah, that's about it from me. I hope you check out this book, and if you have already read it, please let me know what you think. Comment what you think about history, whether you think it's important to read history, why it's important, if you agree with me, if you don't agree with me. Yeah, I'm glad that I got this book out on my channel as an actual review. There are so many books that I've read in the past that I didn't actually review because at the time I wasn't even doing YouTube. that I want to review for you guys and do a video on to show my appreciation, to promote the piece. But this is one of them that I've been meaning to do for a while. Anyway, yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.